السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين نبينا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد. Respected brothers, sisters, friends, and elders, Allah Ta'ala has been very kind to each and every single one of us. Allah Ta'ala has showered us with many, many different types of blessings. And one of the greatest blessings that Allah Ta'ala has bestowed upon us is the blessing of children. Alhamdulillah. So today I thought it would be appropriate to discuss everything related to children. At least having a child, we'll discuss what you need to do, what you need to know about having a child, and what the sunnah method is of having a child, and what you should do when you do have a child. So, as I mentioned, Allah Ta'ala, He has naturally inclined us for having children. As Allah Ta'ala says, زُيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ حُبُّ الشَّهَوَاتِ مِنَ النِّسَاءِ وَالْبَنِينَ وَالْقَنَاطِيرِ الْمُقَنطَرَةِ إِلَى آخِرِ الْآيَةِ. Where Allah Ta'ala He says that it's been beautified for mankind, the love of women, of children, meaning having children, and wealth, and so on and so forth. Allah Ta'ala discusses a few other things. But this is a natural desire, and most humans, most men, that we want children. Most men and women want children. And so therefore, this is one of the greatest blessings of Allah Ta'ala that He has allowed us, and He gives us the ability to reproduce. So to begin, I'll mention a few different topics. The first topic that we'll discuss today, inshallah, is the topic of the desirability of having children. Who want to have children. This is also something that's mentioned in Sharia. So there are many ahadith, and of course this begins, the desire for wanting children, this begins with marriage, of course. In Sharia, of course, it is not permissible to have children out of wedlock. Right? And so therefore, you must have children within wedlock. So therefore, when you're marrying someone, it's extremely important to find someone compatible, to find someone who you're willing to raise children with, someone who you're willing to see as the mother of your children, as the father of your children. It's very important that you see that prospective person, that spouse of yours, as the mother or father of your children. This is extremely important. And now this is a different topic, which I won't get into now, but this is something of importance. That when we are deciding who to marry, it's not only about looks. It's not only about attraction. Of course, attraction must be there. As Rasulullah mentioned that a woman is married for 4 reasons, right? He mentions her beauty, he mentions her lineage, her wealth, and her deen. And he says that you should choose the one for deen, right? The one who has more deen. This doesn't mean that you ignore the other 3, but at the same time, you give preference to the one who has deen. Why? Because this is the one who will continue your lineage, right? The husband or the wife, this is the person you're choosing to continue on your lineage. So it's very important that you choose a good spouse, right? So it begins from there, right? Having good children begins from marriage. So you must adopt a good spouse. And so when you are choosing a spouse, make sure you are looking for someone who is deeply conscious, someone who has the desire to have children. Allah Ta'ala, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, He says, تَزَوَّجُوا الْوَدُودَ الْوَلُودَ. He says that you should marry those women, right? You should marry those women who are loving and they are able to, meaning they are producing or they want to produce children. And the same goes for men as well, for women as well. You should also marry men who are loving, who also want to produce children as well. And so this, Rasulullah continues, he says that the reason why you should marry women who are loving and women who are producing children is so that I can have pride over the large ummah. I can be proud of my large ummah, Rasulullah is saying. And so therefore, this is very important that we marry someone who of course is loving, at the same time, someone who is willing to have children. And these discussions must be held before you get married, of course. You have to speak to your spouse and ensure that they're on the same page as you, they're on the same wavelength as you, that you also want to have, both of you want to have children. And children are a blessing from Allah Ta'ala, which we'll speak about inshallah. So the first is the desirability of having children. The second is to understand that children are a blessing from Allah Ta'ala. Allah Ta'ala says in Surah Al-Surah, Allah Ta'ala says, لِلَّهِ مُلْكُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. To Allah Ta'ala belongs the dominion, the kingdom of the heavens and the earth. يَخْلُقُ مَا يَشَاءُ. Allah Ta'ala creates whatever He wants. And then He says, يَهَبُ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ إِنَاثًا وَيَهَبُ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ الذُّكُورَ. That Allah Ta'ala gifts whoever He wants daughters. And Allah Ta'ala gifts whoever He wants sons. And Allah Ta'ala continues, أَوْ يُزَوِّجُهُمْ ذُكْرَانًا وَإِنَاثًا. Or there are certain people that Allah Ta'ala gifts them with both boys and girls. وَيَجْعَلُ مَنْ يَشَاءُ عَقِيمًا. And there are certain people who Allah Ta'ala tests them by making them barren. Meaning Allah Ta'ala doesn't give them offspring. Right? Allah Ta'ala says, إِنَّهُ عَلِيمٌ قَدِيرٌ. Allah Ta'ala is all knowledgeable, Allah Ta'ala is all powerful. Right? So there's 4 categories of individuals, right? Those who have sons, those who have daughters, those who have sons, those who have both, and those who don't have children. These are all different tests from Allah Ta'ala. Right? But the beautiful thing that we find in this ayah is Allah Ta'ala mentions daughters first. Allah Ta'ala mentions daughters first. And remember that Allah Ta'ala is sending these ayat to whom? Allah Ta'ala is sending these ayat down to the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam at a time when people are burying their own daughters. People are disgraced when they see that they're having daughters. And unfortunately, many of the Sahaba prior to accepting Islam, they also engaged in this as well. And then Allah Ta'ala came down with the Sharia, Allah Ta'ala sent down the Sharia. And Allah Ta'ala honored women. Allah Ta'ala honored women. In a beautiful hadith, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says that those people who have 3 sisters or 3 daughters, and then Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam qualifies himself and he says, no, even 2 daughters or 2 sisters, and he raises them well, he takes care of them. He says, I and he will be, or rather, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he says that Allah Ta'ala will enter that person into Jannah because of him taking care of his sisters or his daughters. So this is what's amazing, that you find such merit for taking care of daughters, taking care of sisters. I remember some time back, I gave an entire lecture on just the virtue of women in different roles. Right? The virtue of women as daughters, the virtue of women as sisters, as mothers, and so on. I spoke about this in detail before. But nonetheless, we understand that Allah Ta'ala blesses people with daughters. In another hadith, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says, "Man 'ala jariyatayn hatta tablugha ja'a yawm al-qiyamati ana wa huwa." Like this. He says that the person who raises 2 daughters well, until they reach maturity, meaning he takes care of them until they need to move on in life. He says, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he says, I and him will be like this in Jannah, meaning he brought his fingers together. Right? What is their merit? All they did was take care of 2 daughters. That's all they did. And this is the virtue. Now, so this is, of course, again, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is people who were very abusive towards women at that time. And he's giving them all of these virtues. Many of these ahadith come under the virtue of taking care of daughters and sisters. Actually, in some narrations, they go further to say that even if there's 1 daughter or even 1 sister you take care of, Allah Ta'ala will enter you into Jannah because of taking care of that 1 daughter or 1 sister. So this is the beauty of our religion, that you take care of your daughter, and this is something you must do. As a father, as a mother, you must take care of your daughter. It's an obligation on you. But despite that, when you do take care of your daughter, Allah Ta'ala will reward you with Jannah. Now, taking care, of course, physically, generally we do that. Physically, generally we take care of our daughter. We make sure that they're well fed, that they go through everything. But more so, we must ensure that they're being raised well, that they have good tarbiyah, that they're growing up with good values. This is very, very, very important, which we'll discuss, inshallah, at the end of this lecture, inshallah. But this is very important that we take care of our daughters. So Allah Ta'ala says that Allah Ta'ala gifts whoever He wants daughters, and then Allah Ta'ala gifts whoever He wants sons. Now there's no hadith which mentions that you raise 2 boys and you get the same reward. There's no hadith like that, right? Right? Because of course that's the virtue of raising daughters that Allah Ta'ala has given. So nonetheless, this is a blessing from Allah Ta'ala. Those who Allah Ta'ala give children, it's a blessing from Allah Ta'ala. Otherwise, there are many people who want to have children, but they are unable to have children. Oftentimes, many people, they're trying for years, unfortunately, through many miscarriages and so on. May Allah Ta'ala make it easy for them. Ameen. Many people, they have many different trials. Each person has different trials. I have a different trial, you have a different trial. But this doesn't mean that we're not going through trials and tribulations. It just means that we're going through different trials and tribulations. So we should be very considerate of other individuals. So nonetheless, going back, Allah Ta'ala, He speaks about the virtue and the blessing of having children. Moving on, the third topic I wanted to discuss is about giving glad tidings when someone does have children. When someone has a child, we should give them glad tidings. It's mentioned regarding the dua which you should recite. The dua which you should recite when someone does have a child, it is Barakallahu laka fil mawhubi lak wa shakarta al-wahib wa balagha ashuddahu wa rizqta birra. That may Allah Ta'ala bless you in this new child of yours, and may you be given the ability to be grateful to Allah Ta'ala. At the same time, may your child be, may your child reach the level or the age of maturity, meaning may he grow older. It shouldn't be that the child passes away at a younger age. And at the same time, may Allah Ta'ala give you the ability to benefit from your child's kindness or your child's obedience to you. Right? So this is a 4-part dua, right? A complete dua. So one is we say, mashallah, one is you say congratulations, but this is very important that you pray for the person. That you pray for the person who had a child, right? And be happy at their happiness. Be happy at their happiness. Right, so again, the 4-part dua, one is that you make dua for the blessings of that child. The second is that you make dua that they're grateful to Allah Ta'ala. As a reminder to them that they should be grateful to Allah Ta'ala for the blessing of having that child. And then that the child should be able to help in a healthy manner reach old age. And at the same time, the child should be an obedient child. This is a very, very, very powerful and very important dua that all of us should memorize. Even if we do not remember the Arabic, we should remember the English. And we should make this dua whenever anyone has a child, we make this dua for them. Right, so this, and also discussing on the topic of congratulating others when they have children. We all know Abu Lahab. We all know Abu Lahab. There's a surah in the Quran about, or Allah Ta'ala cursing Abu Lahab. But this Abu Lahab was the uncle of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was born, someone came, his slave girl, Thulayba, she came and she congratulated, or she told Abu Lahab about his nephew. She told him that your brother Abdullah, he had a son. And so Abu Lahab became so happy that when she gave him the news, he said, you know what? Because you delivered this news to me, I free you for this. I free you. And so, meaning out of the happiness of the Prophet ﷺ, Abu Lahab freed this slave girl. And this slave girl goes on to breastfeed the Prophet ﷺ and so on. But we find that Allah Ta'ala is very merciful. And despite Abu Lahab being one of the enemies of Islam, and despite there being a surah cursing Abu Lahab, despite that, Abbas, the uncle of the Prophet ﷺ, later on sees Abu Lahab in a dream. And he sees him in a very difficult situation, and he asks him, what happened? So Abbas asks Abu Lahab, what happened to you? And so Abu Lahab said, it was very bad. Since I left you all, it's been very, very bad for me. He says, but one thing, that when I freed that slave girl on the good news of my nephew, Allah Ta'ala, every single Monday, Allah Ta'ala gives me some respite in the punishment. Allah Ta'ala lessens my punishment just a little bit because I was happy on the occasion of my nephew being born. And so this is also very important that we congratulate, we are happy for others when they have a child. Moving on, also very important that when we do have children, it's important that, as Rasulullah sallallahu advised, that you should give the adhan in the right ear of the child, and you should give the iqamah in the left ear of the child. This is a sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he did this. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam also did this for, it's mentioned regarding Hassan ibn Ali radiallahu anhuma, right, that he also did this. He said the adhan, and there are many reasons for this. Right? Especially some of the wisdoms of Allah Ta'ala is that the first thing that the child, or one of the first things that the child should hear is the name of Allah Ta'ala. This is very important. So as soon as the child is born, right, immediately once they give you the child, you should say the adhan in the right ear and say the iqamah in the left ear. But many of us, unfortunately, we don't know the adhan. Many of us, unfortunately, we don't know how to give the adhan. So then we don't do it. And the scholars, they mentioned giving the adhan and giving the iqamah is a form of protection against shaitan. When the adhan is given, shaitan runs away. And so when you give the adhan, shaitan runs away. And so therefore you should give the adhan when the child is born and give the iqamah. Others, they mentioned that this is a prelude, right? This is a prelude to the adhan and iqamah that's not given during the Salatul Janazah. Right, so the entire life is considered that short amount of time between the iqamah and the salah. It's a very short amount of time. Okay, that's what the similitude of the adhan and iqamah and the life of the child. That you're preparing for the salatul janazah from that time. From the time that the baby is born, you're preparing for the salatul janazah. Okay, so this is just another wisdom of Allah Ta'ala. Possible wisdom of Allah Ta'ala. So this is very important. Another is that we do tahneek. Right, we should do tahneek, which is that, as Rasulullah sallallahu explains, that this is that you take, and Rasulullah sallallahu did this for many individuals, right? That he would take something sweet, generally it would be a date. He would chew up the date, right? And then he would give a portion of the date into the palate of the baby. Right? Obviously not too much, but a small amount so that the baby tastes it. This is a sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Sahaba, they would bring their children to the Prophet ﷺ to do this. Actually, this is very important as well. Generally, we should bring the baby to someone, someone religious, a scholar or someone. We should bring it to them and then they will do it. But we can also do it as parents. We can also do it as well immediately after the child's birth as well. So there's nothing wrong with that. But it's good if you present it to a scholar and then the scholar can do that as well. Just chew a small portion of a date and then feed the baby that small amount, very small amount. But this is also sunnah. And Rasulullah sallallahu did this for many Sahaba. So then after that, we'll discuss, of course, circumcision. This is also a sunnah for boys. This is very important that for boys, we do circumcision. And generally in the hospitals, they allow it and they do it immediately after the child's birth. If it's a boy, you should do the circumcision. And for the girl, if you want, you can pierce the ears. That's just up to you. That's for the beauty of the girl. She can do it. You can do it for her at that point or later on. But basically, the circumcision, this is a sunnah also, which Rasulullah encouraged as well. Moving on, the next is the aqiqah. Right? Unfortunately, there are some people who misunderstand aqiqah. Right? So it's important also, and this is an established sunnah of Rasulullah to do the aqiqah. Right? Ibn al-Qayyim rahmatullah alayhi has a book, right? Tuhfatul Wadud fi Ahkam al-Mawlud, right? And he mentioned the whole long discussion on how it is permissible, not only permissible, encouraged to do aqiqah. Right? And the aqiqah is basically sacrificing 2 sheep or 2 goats for a boy, or 1 sheep or 1 goat for a girl. So this is also something that we are encouraged to do. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he did this for Hassan and Hussein radiallahu anhuma. And of course, many other ahadith discuss it as a sunnah, and many other ahadith establish this to be a sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we should do the aqiqah as well. Now, when should you do it? Generally, it's mentioned that you should do it in multitudes of 7. Right? So either the 7th day, or the 14th, or 21, 28, 35, and so on and so forth. Right? If you, as early as possible, is the best. Right? That you do it on the 7th day as early as possible. And it's best to do it, the rules are similar to the rules of udhiyah. Right? So obviously you can consume the meat, but it's better to distribute it and give it to the poor and needy. Okay, so of course you should do that accordingly. And if it's difficult for you to arrange here, because sometimes the parents generally are busy, right? The first couple of days, very busy. So you should arrange it, someone back home or someone who can arrange it, and they can feed the poor and needy, you should arrange it there. But you should definitely do it. And so, and then of course, obviously symbolically, you should also do it. Also in your nearby vicinity, invite friends and family and have a feast as well. If you're able to, you should do that as well. So going back, aqiqah is very, very important. The next is the cutting the hair of the baby. Right? This is also very important. On the seventh day of the birth, again, so if the baby was born on Thursday, then the next Wednesday, the baby's hair should be cut. Now, generally they mention shaving, but you can also trim very shortly. You can trim the hair very shortly, and you can use generally you can find a good trimmer and just put a small guard on it, and then you can do it yourself. It's not that difficult, and just be very careful and take your time in cutting the hair of the baby. After you cut the hair, you should collect the hair as much as possible. As much of the hair as possible, you should collect it, weigh it, and then donate that amount in charity in the value of silver. Right? In the value of silver, if you have the ability, then you should donate it in the value of gold. For example, it will be let's say for example 0.07 or 0.08 ounces or something like this. So it'll be less than 0.1 ounce. Right? So it won't be so much. Anyways, but you should definitely weigh that hair, estimate a little more, and then donate that amount either in silver, but generally silver amount nowadays is very, very small. As back in the day, in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, it was equivalent to gold, or it was not too far from gold. Nowadays, silver and gold are vastly different. So therefore, if Allah Ta'ala has given you the ability, then you should donate in gold amounts. And it won't be so much, it'll be like $100-200 anyway. It's not so much anyways. Right? So that's also very important. On the seventh day, you should cut the hair of the baby. Next is that you give a very good name to the baby. This is also very important. Right? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, إِنَّكُمْ تُدْعَوْنَ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ بِأَسْمَائِكُمْ وَأَسْمَاءِ آبَائِكُمْ فَأَحْسِنُوا أَسْمَاءَكُم. He says that on the day of judgment, you will be called with your names and the names of your forefathers. And so therefore, you should adopt good names. Adopt good names. And we find that throughout the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he changed the names of different people. There were many people at the time that they would adopt different names. Right? Not all of them had good meanings. Right? They loved war, for example. So some of them would name their children Harb. For example, many of you may not know, Ali radiallahu anhu wanted to name Hassan and Hussein radiallahu anhu Harb. He wanted to name one, and then Rasulullah said, no, name him Hassan. And then when Hussein was born, he said, the Prophet asked him, if you want to name your son, he said, Harb again. Harb means war. And so he said, no, name him Hussein. Right? So meaning he convinced him to change the name. Other cases where Rasulullah there was a girl whose name was Asiyah, meaning a sinner. He changed her name to Jamila, meaning someone who's beautiful. There's another in another situation, the person's name was Hab, and he changed it to Sil, meaning peace. Right? So different cases of Rasulullah many times the Prophet changed the name of the individual to a good name. So this is also very important because names have a profound effect on a person's life. Names have a profound effect on a person's life. We find that there's an incident that Sa'id ibn Musayyib, famous Sahabi, he mentions that his grandfather was named Huzn, right? Meaning roughness, right, or like harshness. Right? His grandfather came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and so when he came, Rasulullah asked him, "What is your name?" He said, "My name is Huzn." He said, then the Prophet said, "No, you should change your name to Sahal. Change your name to Sahal, that ease." Then this Huzn, he said, "No, I don't want to change the name of my forefather, meaning the name that my father gave me. I don't want to change that name." And so therefore, Sa'id ibn Musayyib, he mentions that I believe that the harshness that we have in our family is because my grandfather's name. Because he didn't change his name, we have a harshness in us. He himself is saying this, that my grandfather didn't change his name, and that's why we have this roughness in us. So this is very important that we adopt good names. Right? And along with that, also ensuring that the next topic is ensuring, and this is a very, very, very long topic, and I've discussed this many times, which is that ensuring that we
we raise our children well, that we give them good tarbiyah, that we ensure that despite them being a minority in this country, that they are raised well, that they love Islam, that they grow up loving Islam, practicing Islam, right? They should know about Islam. Not only just commanding them and beating them. You should not do that. Instead, you teach them Islam through love. And make sure that they love Islam, that they grow up loving Islam. This is very, very, very important. That we raise them in a good manner, with good dini upbringing. As I mentioned, as for physical things, generally we do it, right? You will feed them. You will make sure that they have a good secular education. But it's very, very, very important that you give them a good dini upbringing as well. That they know, they learn Islam, they love Islam. And all of this, they come to the masjid, they pray Salat al-Jumu'ah. As Rasulullah mentioned, that they should be praying from the age of 7. From the age of 7, they should be praying their salawat. Oftentimes what we say, that, oh no, bacha, meaning they're still a child. Whereas Rasulullah said they should pray from the age of 7. So we should encourage them. You know, what happens is that we send them to school from the age of 5, right? Sometimes even younger than 5. We send them to pre-K, we send them to nursery and all these other things. And we don't mind waking them up at 6 a.m. Why? Because we understand the value of secular education. It's important that we understand the value of Salatul Fajr, and that we wake up our children for Fajr. That they're not missing their Fajr. We don't think that, oh, you know, he's still a child, she's still a child, that they need their sleep. No, they need to pray their salah. They have to understand the importance of salah. They need to understand the importance of the religion. They have to wear proper clothing. They have to be respectful. They have to eat halal things. Oftentimes we find that parents they feed their kids McDonald's and haram things. Oh, they're still a child. No, how can you feed them haram? How can you raise that child on haram? This is very, very scary, that the child is being nourished through haram. This is very dangerous. Nonetheless, so we should raise them in a good manner, and that's an entirely different discussion on its own, but very important to be understood. And lastly, I wanted to mention is that and this is very important, that we recite, first of all, we learn and we recite the du'as that are meant for protection. There are many du'as for protection. You should memorize all of them as mothers and fathers. Memorize those du'as and continuously read those du'as on your child. You never know. You never know who has an evil eye, who doesn't want good for you, and they make bad du'a. So be very careful and make your du'as of protection. You know, when our children are born, we generally do things. Right? You invest money, you set up the investment account, you do this, you do that, you make sure that they're protected, you know, seatbelts and all of these other things. But we also have to make sure they're protected from other unseen harms. There are many harms that we cannot see. So therefore, the protection of Allah Ta'ala is very important. The way to get the protection of Allah Ta'ala is not through money, it's through du'as, and it doesn't take so long. Like for example, the famous du'as, reciting that in the morning and the evening. Morning and evening. If you text me, I'll send you these du'as. Reciting reciting that 3 times. He said in the hadith that for protection you should recite again. You recite them once, you blow on your hands, and then you rub over the entire baby just as you put lotion on the baby, right? The hadith comes for yourself, so you're supposed to do it on yourself, but also you can do it on the baby. You rub the entire baby. The mother should do this, or the father should do this. Once, twice, 3 times. 3 times in the morning, 3 times in the evening, and then 3 times before going to sleep. This will divinely protect the child from all problems. So you should do this. Right? This is very important. That way you can safeguard them from any and all issues. This is the divine protection of Allah Ta'ala. And I'll conclude, alhamdulillah, many of you may know, alhamdulillah. If you don't know, alhamdulillah, I had a son last Thursday, alhamdulillah. This is last Thursday, he was born, alhamdulillah, 4:08 a.m. last Thursday, alhamdulillah. So he's about a week old now, alhamdulillah. His name is Sahal ibn Sa'ad al-Sa'idi. Right? And so I mentioned about adopting good names. So this name is actually the name of a Sahabi, who just briefly, this Sahabi was the last Sahabi to pass away in Medina. Right? He lived more than 100 years, mashallah. And he was the last Sahabi to pass away in Medina. He was a Sahabi, his father also was a Sahabi. Right? So this is very important that we adopt good names associated to good people. Many of us, we want unique names. It's okay to have unique names, but adopt good names. Adopt the names of the prophets. Adopt the names of the Sahaba. There are many unique names of the Sahaba. You should adopt one of them. It shouldn't just be some random name. Instead, do research. Do research into the name of your child. If your child's name is, if you want to adopt a good name, so well before the child is born, you should know the name of your child. Do research, take your time and do your research and find a name. Find a good suitable name for your child. That way, as I mentioned, this will have a long impact on that child's life. Not only that child, but also the future generations as well. May Allah Ta'ala grant us all righteous children. May Allah Ta'ala safeguard our families. May Allah Ta'ala grant us the tawfiq and practice.